Hello and welcome to today's Board of Commissioners work session meeting, this 2/2/2/2 Tuesday. And it's the day of a line, it's 2/22/2002. And I'm pleased that you've joined us. We are wrapping up our budget presentation series with none other than our illustrious Sheriff Owens. And we look forward to your presentation today.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. Thank you for seeing me today for this budget presentation. We do have a fairly large slideshow, but we'll get through it as quick as we possibly can, but answer every question you have as well. So we'll jump right into it today because I know you have a long evening. So oh, I'm sorry, hit the wrong one. There we go. That's a copy of our mission statement that we currently have for the Sheriff's Office. And hoping that you should have a slide presentation in front of you as well. We're going to jump right into our challenges for fiscal year 23 and 24. Our first challenge, you can see on the board here, is maintaining appropriate staffing to meet current and projected mission demand levels for the CCSO. Our mission requirements are continuing to increase based on several influencing factors. The CCO must have adequate personnel to complete these functions. One is to manage, control, and protect inmate population while ensuring the safety of CCO personnel, create a better quality of life for CCO personnel, address our field operations and criminal investigations workload, and address increased court system needs such as increased operational and needed courtrooms. So to try to break this down, we did a little differently maybe from what you've seen in the past, and hopefully it's not confusing for you, but I think it gives you a better picture of what we're talking about today. So here's our influencing factors for our challenge number one. So one is demand has outpaced our agency's capacity to meet those demands. Increased courtroom space is being required. Our civil documentation service has increased, as well as our warrants and our inmate services. And here's our reasons. CCSO has only grown by 5 sworn positions since 2012. 5. Compared to, 489 deputies we had in 2012, now we got 494. So our overall combined sworn and non-sworn and part-time has actually decreased by 8 personnel since fiscal year 2012. And to give you perspective, that's 798 in 2012 total employees compared to a total of 790 now in 2021 into 2022. We currently, and I hope I'm not misspeaking, we may be, and I say this again, we may be the only county agency that has mandatory overtime. Mandatory overtime, and that's in excess of $3.92 million per year that our guys and girls have to work for overtime. You know, that's really takes a toll on their quality of life where they have to work overtime, mandatory. Expansion of the courtrooms has, exceeded with our new judgeships in the county. That's continuing to grow. Building A opened in 2019 with additional checkpoints. We did not get any additional personnel to fill those spots. Expanded 10 East Park with additional checkpoints as well. We expanded our magistrate courtroom from 2 to 5 in 2018 with our additional personnel. We additional Superior Court in 2021, but just recently opened, and they're currently under construction for the second Superior Court judge for 2022-23 timeframe, which is under construction as we speak. Our probate court is projected to have another expansion, which we have to be responsible for as well. Our current investigative workload has increased over 18% in the last 5 years. Our warrants have increased 40% over the same time period. Backlog of civil actions, and you're looking at probably about 2,500 or more violent and nonviolent outstanding warrants, 800 civil actions, and 5 months of backlog of evictions. We had to increase our eviction rate by adding an extra team to work overtime just to try to knock down the backload of evictions. And we're still 5 months behind, if not 6. So that is a problem for us and for some of the homeowners and company owners who have to have these actions taken care of. Number 2 up on influencing factors is our inconsistency Well, our past inconsistency in our agency growth, and I can just state that in a real quick blurb. There was no strategic planning by the prior administration, which is leading us where we are today. And as you see, why I'm asking for so much, because we didn't plan well in the future, and that's why we're in the predicament we are currently. Number 3, our organizational structure is not consistently evaluated to determine adequate staffing needs based on demand and priorities, reallocation for personnel as needed. So overall, a decrease in personnel have occurred in the agency since 2012. When I came into office, we was open to 75 positions short in deputies. We have decreased that down to like 20. Right now, I'm probably, and I know it's probably a question, so I hit you before, you probably hit me later. I am probably the only sheriff, and maybe in public safety official, that has a waiting list to hire. So we have over 65 people on the waiting list to come work here. We have interviewing process right now for 40 more. We still got 60 plus waiting on a waiting list being hired. Probably the only one in the city, if not the metro, to have a waiting list to come work. So we're trying to do everything we can to hire and get us where we need to be, just to get the backlog from a year when I first got in office. As you know, our population has increased tremendously since 2010, and with no additional personnel added to the sheriff's office since that time, as I stated earlier. Our field operations and investigations have critical missions, which are state-mandated commissions, and I know you heard this before from some other constitutional officers. These are things I'm bound by the Constitution that I have to do, and we have to do these things. But with the shortages, it's getting us way behind in performing some of these duties. Our detention center employees are mandated overtime, which also encourages our field operation personnel to have to work mandatory overtime. In fact, our field operation personnel are working between 11,000 to 12,000 hours of overtime a year. And that's taken away from their quality of life as well. Here's some challenges for 23 and 24. Number 2, what's depicted before you here is our evidence room. Now, if you look at our evidence room and the one the PD has, you're like, what is this right here? It's like a closet, right? That's exactly what it is. It's a vault. That's what our people work out of. It's just totally unacceptable. So we have to do something to get them out of that. We can't hold our property effectively in a place of this right here. So we have to do something to try to fix that and rectify it. And some of the county officials and some of you have graciously came by and toured this area. Some of the commissioners have, as well as our facility on county services. You know exactly firsthand how this looks in person. This looks a lot worse in person than it does in the video. Another challenge you see on this slide here, I got noted as our inmate costs, and I'm gonna go over that a little bit more, they have started to rise as well. Our fleet replacement and expansion for our increased workforce is also a challenge and we're facing as well. These are influencing factors. Number 1, infrastructure and resource needs to be tied to the growth in order to meet current and projected demands. Our agency infrastructure has not maintained growth of the agency needs, such as our CSI, which is our crime scene investigating unit, our training and evidence unit, et cetera. Our personnel, as you can see from that prior slide, is cramped in a little small vault, which is not at all acceptable. CSI was a molded building, which several of y'all had a chance to go to. The county manager had a chance to visit. Had black mold and other things in there. It was so bad, I haven't tore the building down. Moved all our personnel out, had to replace them into a workspace in our admin building, and we tore the building down. It hasn't been touched in 20 plus years, and when you walked into it, you really see why. So it was a health reason why we had to tear that building down and try to relocate our employees to another working environment. In fact, not only that building, the current building across the street from you, our public safety building, is probably the only building. Let me say that again. It's probably the only building in the county in 25 years that has not been remodeled. Only building. And we got employees working over there. Furniture haven't been replaced in almost the same time. Furniture like in 1970. So it's a bad situation across the street. Please come to look at it like some of y'all have already, and you can see what I'm talking about. So we're not doing so well in some of our infrastructure things. Number 2, our inmate costs. They are increasing based on the needed services to adequate care for inmate population. Increased costs of daily use materials needed for inmates, like soap, food, clothing. But let me break that down a little bit further, how things have increased. An example, Female undergarments have increased by 26.8%. Male undergarments, 24%. We have an increase for just varied clothing items of over 25%. Disposable cups, I didn't notice until they gave me stats, 37% increase for cups. I didn't realize it, but I was shocked when I saw this number. As well as the bag their evidence and bag their clothing and things, a 7% increase in buying those items as well. But as you can see, these items and the costs are steadily rising. Number 3, our yearly medical cost is increasing with the additional mental health services that hopefully will help us keep people coming back, but it's still rising. We're doing the best we can. I think we're on the right platform to get better. In custody and mental health emergencies are going up because I refuse, let me tell you that again, I'll repeat that because I think it's worth saying. I refuse to have an inmate sit in in our jail if we know he's sick. If they're sick and the vital signs are saying something they shouldn't be, they're getting transported. We're not going to have someone sit in our facility and die. So yes, our ambulance services bills go up because we're going to take them to the hospital and we're going to make sure they're fine. I'm not going to allow someone to sit there and possibly die in my facility. So our transport service is going up because we're getting them out of there quick and get them to see a doctor so we can make sure they're okay to stay in that facility. So that is one of our influencing factors. And that's looking at almost about a $2 million additional per year in that category just on those services there. The next slide. These are our personnel costs we're looking at for 23 and 24 from the general budget. So our personnel, you see what we have for the last 2021, 2022 is at 68 million plus. So we're asking for an increase up to 82 million plus. Same for 23 and 24. Operating was at 22 million plus. And we asked for operation an increase up to 34 million plus. And for 24 is 37. Capital for 2022 is 1.75 mil. That's for an increase of 10.9. And the same for 24. And the totals you can see on the chart there. It's an overview of our personnel needs and issues. In fiscal year 12, we had a total of 489. This kind of gives you a little more graphic view of where we are now and where we were then. From 2012 was at 489. And overall personnel in 2012, we're at 798. 2022, we're at 494 with an overall 790. So actually, between 2012 and 2022, we've grown 0.5% per year, which is not even keeping with the standard personnel how the county has increased in size in that same time period. In fact, we have an 8% decrease in personnel in that same time frame. So we're asking for fiscal year 23 amount of 62 personnel, sworn personnel, and 16 non-sworn personnel. And in 24, asked for 56 personnel sworn and 7 non-sworn for 24. For a total of 118 sworn personnel and a total of 23 non-sworn, with a grand total of 141 split over a 2-year period of 23 and 24. Next slide goes our general office budget funds, our personnel costs. As you can see, what it was adopted in 2022 and what we're proposing for 23 and 24. It's like a $13 million increase. That'll be in 23 and no increase in 24. Just asking for the positions to be split, not all at one time, 78 in 23 and 63 in 24. Here's the justifications. It's kind of hard to read in the stream, but you can hopefully be able to see it on the sheets, and they're kind of small. But I think it's very important that you know how we're justifying these positions and why we need them. So the first one on here is our juvenile investigations. You know, since 2017, our numbers have increased, and now we're averaging around 360 juvenile cases a year. And we have one investigator handling that one caseload. The national average between 10 and 12, our guy receiving 30 a month. And that's not including where he may not get a chance to clear that month, but he's receiving an average of 30 new cases a month. So that's a lot for one person to handle. So we're asking to increase that from one investigator to 2 investigators. Number 2 on that list, you see our fugitive investigator, which is very important, and I'll tell you why that's very important. We have currently 7 signed now. We're requesting 2 additional. These guys here are the ones who go out and find our murder suspects. Last year in Cobb County, they was able to locate 68 murder suspects in our county. 68, to including the golf course murder. This is what these guys do. They look and find the most violent people in Cobb County. They only stay in Cobb, they go out of county, go out of state. They go wherever these people may be, and they find them and bring them back here. Very important for us. The third one you see on there is our fraud investigators. We have a total of 6 now. We're asking for additional 3. We have the entire county and all the cities to cover. So we handle all fraud, period. That comes to us. As you can see here, we have about 4,000 cases a year, which is a lot for 6 people to handle. We're asking for an increase of 3 investigators to help us fill those roles. And as you know, we're handling big cases for school board who've been defrauded, as well as the county has been defrauded from companies. So it's a tremendous aspect for us to jump into. We need to have the right people and the right number of people to handle these cases. Elderly Bruce, we're looking for add 1 additional investigator. We currently have 2. And you know that's currently rising not only in Cobb County, but across the whole state of Georgia. The elderly Bruce cases are starting to rise. So we need to make sure we prepare for that and handle it. We're averaging around 245 cases a year. So we have to increase our manpower to handle the workload that's coming forth. And the last, well, several more, but I'll go over one more on this page, and we'll go to the next one if you have any questions. Our investigations regarding sexual offenders. This is a fact you probably didn't know, but I think you need to know. Our county has the 2nd largest sexual offender population in the state of Georgia. 2nd. State law requires us to check these individuals once a year. That's not what we do here in Cobb County. We check them 4 times a year. If I had enough people, I'd check them 6 times a year because I want to know where they're at, what they're doing to keep our community safe. So we surpass what the state say we have to do because it's to keep our citizens of Cobb County safe. So they require 1, we do 4. And if I can do 6 and have enough personnel, I do that as well. So it's critically important that we get those individuals and get me more investigators so I can keep tabs on these individuals in our county because I don't want these predators running around unchecked. So we're asking to go from 1 to 4. So we have 4, we want to add 1 additional to make us 5. And that keep us in line with monitoring those 600 plus that we currently have now. The other things on here is our detention and transport. And we're asking for additional 40, field operations 2, and the 2 captain positions. That'll give us more information for our span of control and need to have more leadership there at these shift commanders and nights and evenings so we can have leadership on both those shifts to cover what we need to do for supervisory roles.
What's your current number? What's your current number?
For captains, 4. They're all located right now at the detention center.
Okay, so you have 4 and you're requesting 40?
No, ma'am.
I'm at the wrong place.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, above.
2 more. 2 to go in our
Let's
field.
go back 1 up. I'm writing in your current number as you're speaking, so my columns are off. For detention and transport, how many are in place?
Detention and transport, we're asking for additional 40. We have right now like 42 deputies per shift.
Okay.
The national average, what we should have per shift is 70, and we run at 40. And that's the reason why we have that mandatory overtime thing I spoke about a little earlier. Where the national average should be 9 inmates to 1 deputy. We're currently running at 45 inmates to 1 deputy.
Okay.
That's the reason why we're asking for so many people.
And you have 42 per shift now? Okay.
And it should be between 55 and 60 per.
Okay, thank you.
We're asking for 1 investigative lieutenant. We only have 1 currently now. But our investigations have expanded so big and much, we need more leadership and supervisors to run an evening shift appropriately as well. And in field operations and our court services, we're asking for 8 additional deputies. This is based on the expansion of the new court system, the new courts adding in. And if you didn't know, so when every time they order add a new court, it's 5 deputies and a supervisor, every time. And so whenever they say they need another superior court, we got to provide 5 deputies. And sometimes they take for the cost, and sometimes we got to come and ask you for the cost. But we have to maintain 5 deputies for that courtroom. So, and we have 1 more coming in 2020, at the end of this year, to add. And then, of course, we have to take care of the additional ones in probate that they talk about adding as well. Next page is some of our non-sworn positions. And what I'm doing this portion, I'm turning this over to Chief Russia. He's going to hit the non-sworn. Then I'll jump back in on the sworn portion again.
And Chief, if you can help me again, when you go through these, to state the current number in addition. We have here listed the ones requested. I'm trying to get.
On which one, ma'am? I'm sorry.
For all of them, when we go to the next page, if you can just help me in letting me know what your current number is.
Oh, okay.
Yep, thank you.
Well, for the 24, when I come back and see this is the 24, most of the asks are the same. This is to give me the total numbers, so that the same numbers apply from the 23 to 24.
Thank you, got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, for FY23, of course, you know, you look at the Sheriff's Department, the non-sworn is just as important as the sworn. And some of the issues and challenges that we're having from the sworn side is kind of like a building block for what's happening on the non-sworn side. As the sheriff stated, when you look at investigations and you look at the caseload of investigations, right now, when you look at the fugitive squad, just by itself, it's about 181 cases per person. Now, that investigator is handling all those cases, but they're having to get information. And one of the outlets for getting that information to develop patterns of life and where this person possibly could be is the intelligence analyst. And another point before I go to this is when he talked about mandatory overtime, he's talking about overtime in the jail. Like that investigator has to leave their position and field operations, what they're doing, like serving warrants and doing investigations, to go support the adult detention center because they don't have enough people. And that's somewhere between 11 and 12,000 hours of overtime per year for that. But the intelligence analysts, we're asking for 2 for FY23 to help us do a better job of locating wanted people. Right now, we have about 2,500 outstanding warrants, violent and nonviolent, with the violent warrants being about 1,000. And when we talk about violent warrants, we're talking about rape, murder, aggravated assault, things of that nature. And also, the 2 intelligence analysts will also be helping with the other investigations that we do, whether it be elder abuse, whether fraud, forgery. The warrant processing tech, right now we're seeing about an 8% increase in arrest warrants received. And the mandatory yearly validation is about 25,000. When we say validation, anytime a warrant comes through, we have to do due diligence to make sure that that warrant is still active. The warrant processing techs that we currently have is 3. They're doing 25,000. And for instance, when you look at the per month, that's about 350 validations per month. In 2020 alone, the validation unit, those 3 people completed 17,170 validations. And this is it's a high liability area because when we go serve a warrant, we have to know that that warrant is active and other things pertaining to the wanted person in the warrant. Detention crew chiefs, both detention crew chiefs and detention maintenance, that's going to give us the ability to have supervisory oversight on maintenance and actual people to do maintenance at night, in the evenings, and also on the weekends. We don't have that currently. It's just Monday through Friday. RMS coordinator, as the Sheriff's Department expands and the complexity expands, like for instance, the body cams, Axon, all the open records, the new RMS system that will be coming to the county. We are going to need 2 RMS coordinators to help us administer all that and oversee all of those activities. Fiscal Tech 3, there's an awful lot of moving parts at the Sheriff's Department from a supply standpoint. You have a supply chain that is related to the inmate population, and you have a supply chain that is related to our employees. And both of them are huge operations, and we need to get a Fiscal Tech 3-1 in to help oversee that operation and make sure that we maintain accountability and inventory as it should be kept. Also, the department HR generalists and HR representatives. There's a lot more that the sheriff wants to do for the employees. A lot of things or a lot of needs of the employees is from an HR standpoint. And so we want to be able to handle their inquiries. We want to be able to assist them with any HR functions that they may have, to include onboarding, offboarding, and all the HR functions in between. And for a total, we're asking for a total of 16 non-sworn personnel to be approved for the FY23 budget cycle. And I think the sheriff wants to come back up and do the FY24 sworn.
The 24th sworn to be kind of simple because it's basically a repeat of the 23 because we're splitting the personnel in half. So not really a lot of changes, the same positions and same individuals. But I want to point it out about the sworn and just in general so you have understanding of this as well when I'm talking about our sworn deputies. And I know it's a tender conversation, but I need to bring it forth to you. As we discuss city hoods in Cobb County, your sheriff has been receiving inquiries as well, separate from what you've been receiving. And inquiries are saying, what is your responsibility as a sheriff to provide public safety to the citizens of Cobb County? And they are quick, the citizens are quick because they're pretty astute to say, hey, it is your job per the Constitution of Georgia to provide safety. So what happens if the county or anyone else decides not to provide that service? And you have a constitutional duty to perform that service. So what are you going to do, Sheriff, if we don't want this or that? So my question is, I do whatever I can with the manpower I have to keep everybody in Cobb County safe. And so I'm fielding questions on that. So I always have to think about what happened, excuse me, what happens and what can I do to keep our citizens safe as well? Because I do have a constitutional duty to do that. And so I'm receiving a lot of questions on that thing, on that side of the house as well. And with not only questions, but some of them kind of tell me what I'm going to do, actually. You're going to do this because this is what you're supposed to do, right? So I'm receiving those type of questions. So I want to make sure that as I get my manpower set for what I need to do, that we're able to help anyone who needs it because I have to. So if it's a city call me or the county call me, I have to help. I can't say no. I gotta go. So I want to make sure we can do that effectively as well. Because the overall responsibility, I take it as my responsibility because I took that oath to say it, and I provide everything we can to protect everyone in Cobb County. So I'm feeling some of the same questions you all are feeling about that, and I'm trying to navigate through those waters as you are and what my duty is to provide service as well.
I know that this is a weighty topic, but that statement just begs a lot of questions about how cities are currently served with their own police department, what their relationship is with providing service in concert with other neighboring cities or the county, and then how does the sheriff's obligation tie into that with respect to what your responsibilities are. And so I know we've been having some conversations internally about the impact of cityhood, and that would be another topic I think would be worthwhile to
Right.
dive
But I just want to let you know I'm feeling some of the same type of conversations for our citizens about what my responsibility is going to be if things do occur regarding services for the sheriff can provide for
I can
them.
imagine.
Okay. Like I said, the rest of the sworn is the same. If you have no questions,
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, Commissioner. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to this previous conversation we had about city hoods calling the sheriff. My understanding is the county had a clear role between what the sheriff was supposed to do and what the police department was to do. So if we're going to be discussing the role of house cities, do we need to clearly define that within the own county, who's going to be having what roles to serve, to then, again, communicate it to the cities? Because right now, I'm kind of feeling like the sheriff is taking over some of the duties of policing, and while I know you're a constitutional officer and it's your duty to keep it safe, the way the county is set up, we've kind of separated those. So if we're going to start blending those, are there other conversations that need to, be taking place in addition to considering cities?
That's a good question. And I guess my response would be the following. Your constituents are saying what the Constitution says of Georgia, which says the sheriff is the highest ranking law enforcement official, and it's his duty to provide public safety for the county. The county can split off and have their own police department, which so for you in the state does. However, the ultimate responsibility of public safety is the sheriff, period. So if the county decides not to provide a service, hypothetically, if you say, I'm not going to provide police services to, city of Johns Creek, then it's my responsibility to provide service because I'm the sheriff of the county. So that's kind of what it is. So I never want to take anything away from my police department because I think they're great because that's where I came from. But I'm just saying if something happens, that's what some constituents are asking. Well, if the county doesn't do this, will you come in and give us services until we can figure out what we're going to do? And my answer will be yes, I have to by law.
And while I understand that is, your duty per office, I have not been made aware of any conversations that we're having that we are going to be changing our policing within the county, which was part of the reason the city hoods started coming about, was because there was the talk of defunding the police and all of this. But my understanding is the county, and as a member of this board, none of those conversations have been had with me. So I find it very interesting that citizens are going to you asking what extent of policing that you are going to be providing when we have a police department that has been doing a great job in the various areas. So this is kind of news to me as I'm listening.
Right. So I think the citizens asking me these questions are citizens that live in maybe in the proposed new cities, that if they do have their own or don't have their own police services, then either they will have to contract with the county or another person to provide them services. Those are the individuals I'm talking about, if that makes sense.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yeah, that was my impression. There certainly hasn't been discussion about changing policing here
Right.
at the county level. This is about concerned citizens reaching out to you directly that are within those proposed boundaries because they're just looking for information for what their options are. I know I've
Right.
had citizens reach out to me as well, asking lots of complex questions about what the proposals mean and how that would impact their services and who renders those services. And most of the answers are, that depends on the IGA that is constructed by those proposed cities if they pass. But as for anything else, we're very committed to public service.
Yes, and I want to underscore that point because this is something that we've had to clarify in past BOC meetings, that when it was being asserted that there were conversations about defunding the police, this board corrected that in that we were the first board to actually institute our step and grade program. I have not engaged in those conversations. I'm not aware of any other commissioner here stating that. And this is some of the information, among others, that we have to respond to clear up misinformation that's out there about cityhood creation. I think what you're sharing here today is just another, adds another dimension to a lot of the issues that we've heard and some of the questions we've been fielding, and we'd be more than happy to partner with you. As we've had one video that was provided that had each of the, well, not each, but a number of our agency heads provide the impact of cityhood on their operation. We didn't go beyond, our BOC structure, but, it certainly has opened my mind to the impact that this could have even beyond those that are within the BOC organizational chart. I believe, Dr. McMorris, you wanted to weigh in as well.
Yes, ma'am. The only thing I was going to say is that when we did the response to the feasibility studies, we specifically went with responding to what was actually in those studies. And so there hasn't been any other conversations beyond what we provided to you all with respect to the impact of each of the departments mentioned in there. There were several assumptions, several things not discussed. That was one of them. The sheriff and I had a conversation about internal conversations in which I said to him, we haven't really had any internal conversations about it, but it does give me pause as well that they are asking you what types of services they would expect from you when they never mentioned that in their study, other than the city of East Cobb that mentioned policing or public safety. So that being said, I said, if and when that time comes, and to reiterate what Commissioner Richardson is saying, until we know for sure their structure and what they are actually going to do, because as Commissioner Gambrill says, it's a feasibility study. Rarely do they ever stay contained within what they say in the feasibility study. So we just don't know for sure. I think what the sheriff is saying, though, is he's getting inquiries about the service that the sheriff would provide for safety. And I think the response is, as our Director of Public Safety stated the night that we were here, is that all of us want what's in the best interest of the residents of Cobb. And we're going to continue to provide the best level of service we can provide from 911, EMA, police, fire, whatever. But until we have those 489, House Bill 489 service agreement conversations, we don't know what they would expect. But I also said to the sheriff, I can't perceive us taking on a fiscal responsibility to provide public safety to the cities that are forming without having those conversations, because you chose to become a city. You're asking to become a city. We do have to think about what is the cost of that service. And in fairness to the other cities that have been around for a long time, we sit around the table and talk about what that looks like. We can't begin to promise what we are or are not going to do without having those conversations with each individual city that is asking for a service.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Braun?
Thank you, Sheriff. The city of East Cobb is the only city that has proposed police, fire, 911. And again, we don't know what all will be involved, but why would our police force or fire be any different in the other three cities than what they are now as unincorporated Cobb? So we're providing the service now. If they become a city and are only looking at code enforcement, zoning, and parks, we'll still protect them as we have been doing as unincorporated. But East Cobb would be different, and if they take over Precinct 4 as their police precinct for the city of East Cobb, we can move those officers to the new Precinct 6 once it's up and running, and they'll still service unincorporated Cobb.
No, I understand. I think that their question, and some of the people asking these questions to me in my office, is regarding cost. Meaning, if they become a city, do they have the contract for the county to provide services to them, since they are a city now and they're not in unincorporated Cobb? So I think that is some of their concerns. Again, they're just asking questions and inquiring about services because they feel it may be a cost involved in the future. And they're asking me, well, aren't you constitutional officer, aren't you sworn to give us that service without additional cost? And I'm like, well, no. There will be a cost involved. I mean, if we pick it up, of course, we have to pay for services just like me and Dr. Morris talked about. So I think that's their questioning.
Yeah. And I think the county manager, referenced House Bill 489 and the intergovernmental agreements, that it'll have to come to that when the time comes, if they get approved and the referendum passes. So We have a lot of questions too about city hoods. You saw from our presentations, all our departments had questions because it's not really clear, and we don't know at this point.
Right. I know it's enchanted water right now, where everybody kind of don't know what it's going to end up being. And my reasoning for telling you that was so you understand some of the dilemmas I'm facing from my constituents asking me questions I really can't answer. And I want to make sure I'm seeking in the same force to a certain extent of what the county says, and I'm not going too far to the right, too far to the left. But I did think it would be remiss to me if I did not tell you the questions being asked of me as your sheriff and what type of services they may expect me to provide if things don't go the way some of them think it should go.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I think bringing it up in the context of this budget discussion is implying that there will be some budgetary impact that right now we're perceiving as an unknown. But some of the additional statements made just beg some questions about service delivery today with our current cities, because I think that framework would help us understand what the framework would be should new cities form. And so I think, Dr. McMorris, there's opportunity to have a discussion about that, but then also to see with any of our other constitutional officers, what questions are they fielding, and are they also anticipating some budgetary impact that we may not have been aware of? Yeah.
Thank you. Just a clarification question. Are you receiving inquiries around the county, or are they concentrated with the East Cobb City Hood?
It's more about the ones that become cities. From
Right,
around.
but I mean, like, is Lost Mountain, Vinings, like, are you receiving
The
inquiries
ones who
from?
are thinking about becoming the city.
There
The area, the constituents are the ones who are thinking about becoming the city.
are 4 city hood
Yes,
efforts.
the 4.
She's asking if it's just East Cobb, or
No,
is
I've
it?
been asked questions by each one, not by
Okay.
anybody of constituents from each one of the 4 cities.
Understood. Thank you.
Ross, just another thing to add to the webpage.
All right, so I guess we got you off tangent, so I just want to throw you off track for a second. So we got back, I'm on page 14. Last thing I said was kind of repetitive. It's just asking for the same people in the next year as well. So here's some layout of what we're actually asking for again on our budget request here on operating budget. We're asking for an increase in 2023 of $11+ million from 22 million plus to 34,295. And in 2024 for additional 2 million to make that total in 2024 budget 37 million for the total for 24. A substantial increase in 23 because of all the personnel we want to try to add to get us where we need to be. And you see it levels out in 24 because everything is front loaded in 23 and half will come in 23 and half will come in 24. So operating for 23 and 24, again, this is just some detailed operation requests. I think it's important for you to take a look at least know some things we're spending and have to maintain. Spending well over $1 million in our annual maintenance contracts. You know, the facility, if you haven't, I know y'all been to the jail, if you haven't been in a while, it's a city within itself. And it takes a lot to keep that place up and running, all the maintenance contracts we had. We had expansion of our security system there with Stanley's there on property now doing that for preventive maintenance, you know, for kitchen and laundry repair, and the expansion of additional equipment for HVAC equipment as well. All those have to have annual contracts to keep those things running. Safety supplies, you can see on here, over $500,000. That's basically due to our new hires. As I say, we was down 70 plus when I got in office, and we were able to reduce that down to 20 vacancies, and that increased our uniforms and supplies by hiring new people up to this point. Uniforms I discussed about, our computer software, just upgrading those as it go forth, which is a much needed thing. This allows us to be more tech savvy and more efficient. And by having good software, it really can prevent some safety things for us as well. Our food and service supplies, feeding the inmates, it's expensive. We just redid a new food service contract, goes into effect in April, and so this is parts of that contract there. Registration fees associated to functions that the sheriff's office attend. Travel expense, is at $99,000 for schools, on-site training sites, professional development, et cetera. In order to become a professional agency, we have to give our personnel proper training, and we got to send them to school to become professional. And that's what we plan on doing at the Sheriff's Office. We want to become a professional agency, as well as we want to become a certified agency, which we're working toward becoming as well. We're anticipating, if you look at our pie chart, which we'll get to you later, it's not on the budget, but we're close on our pie chart of becoming certified within a year and a half, almost 2 years since I come in office. Which should be a good pace. We're probably about 6 months ahead of schedule of getting that done. So we'll probably get what we call a triple crown rating in a little over 2 years, which takes some time, almost 4 years. And we're pushing hard to get it so we can prove to the county and also the state that this is one of the most professional sheriff's offices in the state, if not the nation. And just in case you didn't know, here's a little kudos to your sheriff's office. Your sheriff's office was voted one of the most up-and-coming sheriff's offices in the United States by ACP. So I think this is something we all should be proud of. That's the employees and everyone, because we're working very hard to become more professional and be that model agency in the state. We're also all the model state for mental health care. We are the model sheriff's office for mental health care. The state uses our mental health program that we just started as a model for the state. So we're doing some great things in that aspect as well. Going to the next slide into 2023 on our capital. And again, I stated our building, just that one, I just give that from Pacific, is only one, if not the only building in the county that has not had any renovations done to it in 25 years. We're asking for an increase in our capital in 2023 of a little over $9 million, and no increase in 2024. On our next slide.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Sheriff, is any of this capital in SPLOST, the new SPLOST that just started?
For the stuff at the jail, yes, ma'am, but not across the street.
Okay, so the 10.9 million is all for renovations or improvements for capital?
The stuff inside jail, that's a lot of SPLOST that came out of 2016, and what we had in 2022 was a little bit more roof replacement.
Okay, so this is in addition to anything on SPLOST?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide with the capital. This is some more information about our capital expenses. We have vehicles and motors inside this capital expenses, a little over $2 million. Renovations of our building structures. This is a kind of breakdown, detailed breakdown of everything. A little over $5 million. Safety equipment, which includes our body cameras, our tasers, and our in-car cameras, our safety equipment, which is like our ballistic vests and AID vests. The one difference that you a little bit see that we may have on that vest side that the PD doesn't have is our AID system. That's a vest we wear over top of the vest inside the facility. So if the deputy is stabbed or hit with a blunt object, it automatically alerts us to let him know that he's have a puncture wound or something to him, or if he go prone, it automatically allows us to know that as well. So that's another piece of equipment we use to try to keep our deputies safe inside the facility. You can see upgrades for our computer, radio, and communication equipment in there, over $100,000. Office furniture, as I stated, has not been replaced in almost 20 years in several places. Our buildings and grounds and equipment, over $100,000 we're asking for our required maintenance and instruction and building upkeep. Plumbing and structures, required for replacement for our plumbing at the Duct Tension Center. And because we always have to complete that. That's our new water testing. As you don't know, we unfortunately had a lawsuit about our unsafe water. We was able to fix that with some plumbing things, but to keep that going, we have to test the water on a monthly basis to make sure our water is correct and good and safe, which it is. But continue that, we have that as a cost incurred with that as well. As you can see, going down, we have our laboratory and scientific equipment we're asking for. This allows us to take care of adequate investigations there at the facility. Most of the drugs and things of that nature is there. We have to test those things there in our facility and keep those safe. Fentanyl is dangerous. We have to keep that stuff separate and have a testing facility for that stuff as well. The next slide. Some more detailed capital respects, and I'll try to get through these. These are the same thing pretty much for the following year. That was the absolute last slide, I promise. I know it was long, and I know it was a lot of asks, but I think it was necessary, and I think I've heard the Madam Chair say to other people, ask for everything, and you may see what you may get. But I want to make sure you understand all our asks and all our needs and what we need from the sheriff's office. I like to say we're providing a great service to the citizens of Cobb County. I think we've made some great strides over the last year in my first year in office. I think we are trending in the right direction. I think by adding the amount of personnel I'm asking for and increasing that will give our deputies and our civilians a better quality of life to work. You know, it's when it's hard when someone's supposed to get 3 days off a week, they only get 2 days off a week, because every week they got to work one of their off days. And every weekend, somebody got to come in on an off day and work a weekend. And it's kind of hard to tell the employee that, and where you got to put in for 6 months in advance to take a day off. Things like that is what we operate at the sheriff's office. And then when we don't have that personnel, and I close with this. When we don't have the personnel, you remember people were saying that Cobb County is such an inhumane place to keep inmates. You know why? We don't have enough personnel. We don't have enough personnel. They be locked in their cell for 23 and a half hours a day. How do I get them out? By having personnel there. I'm not going to do that to anybody. So us to get from doing what we were doing in the past, we got to have the personnel to treat people right and fair. And they shouldn't have to stand in the cell for 23 and a half hours a day because we're short personnel. That's really inhumane. So I'm asking if you really consider some of the requests that I present for you today. Thank you for your time. And if you have any further questions for me, I'll do my best to answer them for you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Sheriff, for that presentation, and Mike Register, and congratulations on becoming the up-and-coming Sheriff's Office and your recognition there. But my question is regarding the 65 that you have on the waiting list, and are there budgetary constraints that are hindering you from hiring any on that list, that are on the waiting list?
No, no, currently, so I'm 25 short. I have about 17 that we're going to hire hopefully next couple weeks. You also graciously unfroze about 20 of my positions so that I'll be able to hire almost everyone on that list, because I have some pending retirements coming up in the next month, so that'll kind of balance itself out.
Okay. And will any of those employees reduce the mandatory overtime?
No, ma'am.
No? Different
Those
area?
are shortages that was already short when I walked in office over a year ago.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I just have a couple of questions. For the additional cost increase with the percentage change, what is that? What is our benchmark? Like, from what point was it an increase? Are we talking about an annual increase? Or are we talking about since 2012? Because I know 2012 was used to show the personnel staffing
Yeah, that
levels.
was 2012 is used to show from how we've grown or not grown since
Right.
that time frame. The benchmark for the percentage of
The increase in female undergarments, male undergarments, disposable cups.
that was just pulled from this year and from what we've been paying for the last 2 years since COVID, where the prices have grown
Got
up
it.
too. That's where we got it from, our recent prices, what we're paying now.
Thank you. And then the next question, for the personnel with the 489 in 2012 and then 494 in 2022, is that increase of +5 only due to us filling vacancies, or is this the total cap of, like, is this the total number of positions that we're looking at, or are we looking at vacancies being filled?
Those are total number they hired. I'm not sure. When I walked in office, I had 70+ vacancies, so it's kind of hard for me to answer. But I know that's all they hired within that time frame. A net gain of that. You know, they might have hired some and lost some, but they had only a net gain of 5.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking is because some of it has at least articulated in these messages, in these presentations, some of it is due to the pay competitiveness, which
Yeah,
is tied to the vacancy.
I can see that having an issue.
Or are we talking about just, there aren't any more, like, you want more positions filled? And I know you do, because we talked about the additional
Right.
seats, but I was just looking at, is it +5 total, or is it +5 because we're having trouble filling vacancies?
Well, ma'am, I'm going to answer it this way. I'm not sure what they did before I got here, why they can only have a +5. But I can tell you, since I've been here, I hired over 125 in a year.
Okay, got it.
So I don't know how they didn't do anything in that time frame.
Okay. Well, that clarifies my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Gamble, do you have any questions? I have some questions too, and I think commissioners are kind of getting to something that's not clear to me. It's just the change in personnel and understanding what's associated with vacancies versus what's associated with new positions being added to the number of positions that your organization has.
Right, so the numbers I'm asking you are for additional.
And, okay, they're not to include the vacant positions?
Correct.
Vacancies overall, how many do you have?
Right now, 22.
Okay, and that's of the 17 that you were talking about that you have?
Right, that's it, separate from that 17.
Okay, so after you hire, you'll still have 22 vacant?
But we have, like I said, 54 in the waiting list already. So we
Okay.
should be able to knock that 22 down to 0.
And just to, again, reiterate Commissioner Richardson's question, once you fill those vacancies, those are not going to cover your requests for new positions?
No, ma'am, because we're still nowhere near the average where we should be at between 55 and 60 per shift, where we're at 42.
Okay, thank you. I also have a question about what the number of inmates has been for the same time period. I know you've addressed.
I didn't go
personnel.
back and do an inmate analysis from 2012 up to this point, but prior to COVID, I know for a fact they was hovering around 2,700 inmates. Right now, we're at 1,800, so
Okay.
we're almost 1,000 less than what we have. We can hold over 3,300 or 34 if we put them on what we call boats on the floor, which
Okay.
I probably never do, but if we put them on the floor, we can hold probably 34 to 35.
So then, a question I have is how the staffing is commensurate to the number of inmates. If you have a certain number of vacancies, could that be due to having less persons in the jail? And I know there's been a policy initiative to not have lower-level offenders be housed in jail.
Right.
That I know that our DA has been very interested in, as well as commissioners. And I think just from a state and national level, due to
Right.
just exploding incarceration rates. And so I need help understanding how we can be responsive, also recognizing that policy shift that's resulting in less people who are at least less violent offenders being in the jail, and ensuring that there is some reasonable ratio of the personnel request to that, because I just can't see that from what's being presented here today.
So regarding the offender and most violent and not violent, what we did here in Cobb County, and I took office, had opportunity to meet with all the chiefs regarding our population and what we were receiving in our population. And based on what and of course, it was in the COVID timeframe, we had to really limit what we bring into the facility and try to just get the violent ones, the ones that really need to be in the facility. So, and all the chiefs and us agreed to what I would accept in our facility.
Okay.
And they agreed upon that, and that really lowered that population in the facility.
Okay.
And our population, I can tell you, is going to rise back up as we relax some of those things. It's just what's going to happen. I don't know if we can keep those same restraints on the PD and the cities forever, and I wouldn't want to do that. And we kept those restraints on them because of the COVID, basically. But as COVID hopefully goes away, a lot of those restraints will be lifted. So people getting arrested for no driving license and other things, smaller things they may could not arrest for today and do later and handle, they probably be arrested for and come back into the facility once we release all of those restraints.
Okay, so is that shift in the number solely COVID-related, or are there other policy interests that are at play?
I think a majority of it's because of COVID. We changed the
Okay.
policies because of the COVID-related.
Okay. So, yeah, if we can just see something over time that shows the number of inmates in the jail.
Prior to?
Well, you did provide financial information from 2012, so if you can just go from 2012 to present, that would be helpful.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah. And again, I tried to capture, but I didn't capture the number of current staff to the requests.
It's on, yes, ma'am, it's in there.
Okay. And I'm getting of the age where I'm going to have to get some help other than just, the eyes that God gave me. And so, we'll take another look at this document that you provided.
Okay.
So I can help to put that in context. Let's see, I think I didn't have any additional questions, but I do want to make sure that I tell you that you've have done an excellent job, I think, in shifting the morale of employees that are working for the sheriff's office and the perception of the services that your office provides. And, there is a reason why you're getting the recognition that you've received. And so I want to personally thank you for that. I know you are a constitutional officer that does not fall within our organizational chart, but anything that any one of us does to help county helps us all. And you've done a great job. We hope to be able to address some of the needs, and I know that we have actively addressed a lot of needs already this year with some of the things that have come across in our agendas. And so we look forward to seeing what we can do for this upcoming fiscal year.
Thank you.
Yes, you do have two more questions. Commissioner Burrow and Commissioner Sheffield.
It was just a quick question. Of the 125 hires, what is the breakdown for the sworn versus non-sworn officers?
The 125 I've discussed, is just sworn. We have
Sworn, okay.
civilians. I didn't put that in that count.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks, Sheriff.
Commissioner Burrow.
Yes, thank you, Sheriff. I too would like to congratulate you on a job well done in the last year. Thank you. Last year, in the budget, we implemented the stepping grade to address compression. So I know you were very supportive of that.
Yes,
because it
ma'am.
affects your deputies and officers as well. And the new positions coming in, since we have 2 more years to get rid of compression, will that affect the new folks coming in, for new personnel, as far as their stepping
With the new
grade?
stuff. No, actually, HR, and actually, I think Randy's here, they've already kind of created a form of how new personnel come in that pay chart, so we're not recreating a new pay compression problem.
Okay.
So our HR has already factored that in as we hire new people where they should come in, so it won't create that gap again.
Okay, but for the next 2 years, if it is passed in the budget, it will do away with compression throughout.
That's what we're hoping, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we need your support again this year.
Oh, I'm there. And one last thing, and I guess I really need to say this to all y'all before I get out of here. First and foremost, on behalf of the entire Sheriff's Office, we want to thank the whole Board of Commissioners for all your support for the year. We have done some tremendous things at our facility. We're getting roof repairs. We're getting locking mechanisms, which you'll see hopefully on the next agenda, one that I think email we discussed about. We're getting new showers put in, new light fixtures put in, floors redone at the jail. A lot of those things that y'all helped approve on the SPLOSH and the citizens has helped us tremendously to get our facility almost up to standards of where it should be. And the things you've done for us as far as helping us get vehicles where we were short, helping us do some pay classification from Dr. McMorris, and just helping the Sheriff's Office is overall supporting us and getting where we need to be. We were way behind where we should be. And I want to personally thank each and every one of you for your support, which y'all have given us up to this point, and hope I get a lot more, but whatever you can give us, continue to be great as well. But you have done great things for us, which has improved the morale of my office based on a lot of decisions you all made. So for that, I say thank you on behalf of myself and the entire Sheriff's Office for your support up to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, on that note, our work session for today is concluded. And don't forget, tonight we have our Board of Commissioners meeting right here at 7:00 p.m. Thanks and take care.